And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
Our next performer, she fished salmon and albacore tuna on the fishing vessel Spring Persuader. She was a product tester for Grundians. I wonder how that went. And I am founding a fisherman wives group in the Columbia River area called Fish Her. Hailing from Westport, Washington, but making her home port here in Astoria, Oregon. Let's give a big, warm fisherman's welcome to Amy Sharp. Do you want a loose mic or do you want it back?
I can put this in here. I think. That is still am product tester and fisherman. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a joy to be here tonight. Let's see. The ocean is my church, the divine body of my Christ. Tithing my whole life, I gladly make the sacrifice. Tossed about in holy waters, I am baptized in the salt. To watch the sun boil down into the ocean is to understand Gestalt. The sunrise and sunsets are when I sing my praise. I will always worship my God for all my salty days. So I get the joy of fishing with my significant other, and you know, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of test, there's a lot of success, and there's a whole lot of just him and I and ocean for a very long part of my year. So I always really love it when the seabirds show up. They're just, you know, they're my friends, they're my buddies, and I love them, and I think that they know that, but they also think I'm weird. So that's okay. They like it when I feed them. And I really love the albatross, and I, you know, felt very compelled to tell the story on how a sailor can pass away and come back as an albatross. So here it is. The albatross in flight slowly dips his wing. Above the waves he loves so dearly, they have always made his heart sing. Oh, what a journey to be found so far offshore, truly a thing of legend, another fisherman's folklore. For he was just a young lad when he first stepped foot on ship. 30 years he sailed the seas, to the ocean he did worship. Until one fateful day, when goddess ran with all her wrath, conjured up a sea storm amidst his vessel's path. With terror you can't imagine, his vessel split in two. Caught in Iran's purse seine, she drug him deep beneath the blue. She claimed the best fisherman to see if his love was true. With dying breath upon her seabed, he whispered, I love you. She took him within her body, consumed all but his soul. Impregnated by his love, she gave birth to him whole. The young fledgling flapped with all of his might until he burst through the waves, an albatross in flight. For every mariner drowned, sailing the seas for gold, there is a regal albatross just grateful to grow old. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have to go into a short poem that says something very nice about our operation, because Johnny is a world-class captain to work for, and the boat is honestly the love of my life. So my next poem is not going to be so nice, so I have to do a nice one real quick. There was a boat that did, only because it could, buck across the Pacific Ocean, whether or not it should. That boat didn't stop, never to take a rest. The boat kept on fishing, pushing to be the best. The boat is always trolling up and down the west coast, always catching fish, producing more than most. The skipper runs his boat, often without sleep, always working hard, a highliner of the fleet. This next poem is a noble story from a couple of years ago. I was very inspired after last Fisher Poets, and I said, you know, I'm gonna do better this coming season. And I actually wrote a poem that I enjoy it, and I hope you do too. And I also got to annoy the heck out of Johnny with it, because I set it on repeat for about 4 months straight out on deck. And it's long, it's my longest one yet, so I don't have it memorized, so bear with me. We started on the prairie in search of the grand Chinook, the prize of all the salmon, if you can persuade them to bite your hook. Aha, the birds and whales, surely the kings are here. So we ran back to our troll pit and quickly set our gear. The prairie was looking promising, so we gave it our best effort. Back and forth we tacked, but the prairie was a desert. With disgruntled sounds in motion, we surely pulled our gear, to the waning of our enthusiasm and waxing of our fear. Captain throttled up the boat, turned her south away from Canada. Surely we will find some bait between here and the Willapa. So hour after hour, he just stared at the blank screen, praying to see bait fish, viewer to a dismal scene. Down past Destruction Island, then down past the casino, and somewhere out in front of the Willapa, a pitiful sound did grow. No feed, sounds my captain's hypnotic cry. 6.4 knots through crested waves on a southern bearing we ply. In the midst of all the muttering, as if a light bulb had turned on, Captain jumped and turned towards me, and I responded, "Yes, dear John? You know, for old time's sake, I think I know where to take a look. For I have caught 1,000 kings right off the head of Tillamook." So with a glimmer of hope, we kept pushing to the south until we slowed the boat just past the Columbia's mouth. We threw in our spoons and hoochies onto that ancient tack and towed from above terrible Tilly down past beautiful Haystack. This is where dear John reminisced on his childhood of all the kings in Coho caught back when the dory days were good. With trucks and trailers the men would gather there on Cannon Beach, little Johnny running amongst them, learning all they'd teach. The son of a fisherman, he'd deckhand for his seat in the final glory days of the dory fleet. But alas, here we are now, and not one fish on our hook. "Let's just pull our gear," he says, with a saddened look. 6.4 knots through crested waves, we set out on our southern bearing. No crab spawn, no anchovy, not one single herring. No feed, I listened to that entire second day as we searched off Garibaldi on that 28th of May. Further down the hill it happened, there at Cape Lookout. The birds were startled off the water when Captain John began to shout, "What is the phase of the moon? Where has all the feed gone? The water's clear and blue, and the temperature's all wrong." It's a scene I've seen 100 times when their judgment begins to cloud, because there's nothing in the world like salmon fishing that can make a grown man pout. Pacific City to Cascade Head, Cape Foulweather to the rock pile. No feed, mile after mile. Then there came the banter across the radio. Pumper Tom saying he has 60 when everyone else has 0. I've learned a lot about my fellow men and the character of a guy, because there's nothing in the world like salmon fishing that can make a grown man lie. Out on the banks, Captain yelled, "We are running again this whole second night. We will not slow this boat until the abandoned high spot is in sight." And so it was that we slowed the boat on the 29th at dawn. Almost 50 hours without sleep, running on coffee and a yawn. I'd heard a dozen stories. Abandoned high spot, home of the Grand Chinook, the biggest in the Pacific, coming up on every hook. And so, with anticipation, we threw in all the leaders. Instantly, with joy, we started catching feeders. At 9 a.m. it happened, the hardest a spring has ever pounded. Our hearts quit beating, neither one of us made a sound. It was on our starboard main, the hardest I've seen a pole shake. I felt it in the deck. It made the whole boat quake. It was at that moment the silence was finally broke. We will never catch this fish unless we give it a 30-minute soak. And so time crawled by, minute after minute. Everything else in the world vanished. We were fully in it to win it. After the 30 minutes, John began to pull the line. He ran the East Hope smoothly as he took his time. As each clip emerged, I did a hard swallow, until from the depths came a gigantic black shadow. So cool and collected, John pulled the giant through the water. It didn't fight, it didn't spin, and John didn't falter. I couldn't believe my eyes at the sight of a 60-pound Grand Chinook, the biggest king I've ever seen, come up on a hook. There at the back of the boat, the three of us locked eyes. The look on that king's face when John swung the gaff was the look of surprise. I'll never forget that moment. When the 70-pound test broke, that Chinook just shook his head like we were just a joke. John ran into the wheelhouse, where I figured he'd curl up and die, 'cause there's nothing in the world like salmon fishing that can make a grown man cry. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Blow the gentle wind o'er the dark blue sea, no more will stay thy hand, since Willie is safe at home with me in his own dear native
Okay, thank you so much for talking with us today about the FisherPoets Gathering. We really appreciate your stopping. Can I ask your names and where you're from?
Christine
And Phil.
from Portland.
Yeah.
And is this your first time at the Poets Gathering?
No, it's
Third.
our third time. Third time
Yeah.
at the Poets.
Okay.
Before COVID and this one.
So if you're here 3 times, you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's motivated you to come back. What is it you've super enjoyed about it?
Oh, the variety.
The variety. Yeah. There's some of the artists you want to hear longer, and yet 15 minutes, and then you're on to kind of somebody else, and the songs and the poetry and the prose, and some of it's very heartwarming, and some of it's just funny.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, I know we only had performances last night that you probably went to. We haven't seen tonight's yet, but for what you've seen so far this year, what was your favorite?
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's such a variety.
It's the immersive experience, and there's such heart from each of those that are presenting, and it's such an honor and privilege to be in the audience. So we're loving all of it.
Oh my gosh, you were the perfect people to interview. So you said that so beautifully. So, tips for anybody coming in, or anything you want to tell them to lure them in?
You can't go wrong with any of the venues. Just pick one, and I don't know.
And you can always get up and walk at any time, and it's so welcoming here in Astoria, and it's a perfect spot. And it's small. It feels like intimate encounter, being able to hear these such personal stories, and then you get to mill around and see faces that look familiar and new faces, and you just come. You're gonna love it.
You know what? It's been my privilege to talk with the two of you. Thank you so much for your time.